Let's move on to first the permitting issue number 2. Well, if you would like to very briefly, Barbara, respond to item 1, which was informational. It's basically Mr. Krakow and the pro tem. If you want to briefly respond, I know we're going to be getting into the weeds on specific issues that were raised. So.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Barbara Lee. I'm the Director of the Department of Toxic Substances Control, and I do appreciate the opportunity to discuss with you today the administration's proposed budget and spring finance letters for DTSC for fiscal year 2016-17. First, I'd like to thank you, Senator Wolk, for the time you took to go over some of the proposals with me in your busy schedule, and I'd also like to recognize the work of your committee staff and the Legislative Analyst's Office as they've waded through the work of reviewing these proposals. I know it's been quite a job for them, and we appreciate all the time that they have put in on that. I'd also like to recognize and acknowledge the efforts of the independent review panel and thank them for the work that they have undertaken. The panel is devoting considerable energy and thought to its review of the department's programs. Each of the panel members brings unique expertise and perspectives to their important task. Their independent review and recommendations are informing my ideas and decisions as I strive to implement the policy directions given to DTSC, both by the administration and by you, the legislature. I look forward to working with the panel over the next little over a year and a half, and I'm committed to real and measurable improvements in the programs DTSC is charged with implementing to protect and to serve California's people and the environment. Since November, the Independent Review Panel has held 7 public meetings. For those meetings, DTSC has provided detailed written summaries of its program areas that the panel is charged with reporting on. These include our permitting, enforcement, public participation, and fiscal management activities. The department has also provided an overview of its efforts related to environmental justice and also to the closure of the Exide facility and cleanup around it. In the last several months, we've dedicated several thousand staff hours in support of the Independent Review Panel. This includes my time and the time of my executive staff and management team and our line staff. DTSC has given 5 separate in-depth presentations on its programs, activities, and recent reforms, including an overview of our programs and the enhancements to our permitting program and our progress working on the permit backlog. As directed in the budget bill and as Mr. Krakow mentioned, the department has also redirected 2 of its positions to support the independent review panel directly. Those staff members were selected by the panel, and we've been assisting them as they learn their new roles and assume full responsibility for the support of the panel. It is true that those are limited-term positions, as this is a limited-term panel, and as Mr. Krakow noted, one of those limited-term staffers did successfully compete for a position with the department that is permanent. It was also a promotion for him, and he is very excited about starting with the department. But I will say that we have committed to ensure that the work for the panel continues. He will straddle both positions until his prior position is backfilled. We are currently recruiting for it, and it's in our interest to make sure that the panel is functioning well and efficiently. So we're doing everything that we can to make sure that that happens. And as the chair, Mr. Krakow, noted, that we work in partnership with them. We look forward to working with the independent review panel to accomplish this shared goal of strengthening the department's ability to better protect communities from toxic chemicals. It is a big task. We have a lot of priorities that we receive from the administration, from you, the legislature. We hear them also from the public we serve, the facilities that we regulate, and as well from the independent review panel. And my task is to integrate all of those incoming directions that we receive to make sure that we chart a sustainable, transparent, and accountable path forward into the future. And I am absolutely determined that we will do that.
All right. Are there general questions of Ms. Lee? Otherwise, I'm just going to go right into one of the key issues that was raised by the panel and certainly is of interest to us and many others is the permitting issue. So why don't we go into that? There are substantial changes to the budget being suggested by the governor. Why don't you speak to those?
Thank you. When the governor appointed me a year and a half ago, he specifically tasked me with assessing the strength of DTSC's regulatory programs and the improvements needed to more effectively realize the department's mission to protect public health and the environment. I was fortunate that steps had already been taken toward fixing the foundation, and in the last 17 months, we have maintained and built on that progress. This is particularly true for the permitting program. With limited term resources approved by the legislature in fiscal year 14-15, DTSC developed and implemented a permit enhancement work plan, including 3 Lean Six Sigma projects to reduce the time needed to review permit applications from about 4.5 years to an average of 2 years for 90% of our permits. This is compared with a national average of roughly 5 years. In the last 2 years, we've taken significant steps to improve the efficiency of our permitting process and the quality of our decision-making on permit applications. We are also committed to early public involvement in our permit process. We are currently asking community groups around the state to comment on a proposal to better involve them in decisions when we begin the initial administrative review of the application for a permit. We're proposing a community assessment, community notifications, and a public workshop that will inform the community around a facility and obtain feedback from them on the permit application well before any decisions are made by our technical team. In fiscal year 14-15, we also received limited term positions to reduce the backlog of permit applications that had lingered for more than 5 years. DTSC made significant progress in this area as well. The governor's budget for fiscal year 16-17 now includes 2 proposals to augment DTSC's permitting program. The January 10th budget proposal proposes to continue 8 limited term positions for permit review that would otherwise expire in June. A second proposal in a spring finance letter would add 15 new positions, including 14 engineers and a supervisor. These resources will allow the department to make decisions on 90% of its permit applications in 2 years and will prevent the development of future permit backlogs. The spring finance letter also includes a proposed change to the fee for permit review that would eliminate the option to pay a flat fee in lieu of a fee for service that fully recovers the cost of reviewing the permit application. Fee for service also makes both the permit review staff and the applicant more accountable for the time spent reviewing permits and will contribute to a more efficient process. Your committee staff flagged 3 key areas for the department to provide additional information. First, the 2 proposals are based on the results of the extensive analysis we did under our permit enhancement work plan and the 3 Lean Six Sigma projects. They reflect clear workload performance standards that are embedded in the enhanced permit process. These resources will allow DTSC to make an average of 16 permit decisions per year. This ensures all existing permits will be reviewed on a 10-year cycle, and applications for new permits or modifications to existing permits will be reviewed timely as well. The proposed change to fee-for-service is consistent with the recommendation of the independent review panel that the governor and the legislature require the department to recover the full cost of permit review. Now, as I said, the proposed resources will prevent future backlogs where permit applications linger for 5 years or more without decisions. I want to be very clear, however, that this will not eliminate expired permits. Under existing law, permit renewal applications are due to the department 6 months before the existing permit expires. Even with our very streamlined permit review process, it takes, on average, 2 years to review most permits, again compared to a national average of 5 years. The law allows a facility to continue to operate with that expired permit while the permit review is taking place. So again, they come in 6 months before they expire under the law, and it takes us at least 2 years to do that review.
How many of those are there?
How many permits are there?
Next year or the year after, how many?
The number each year that we actually receive fluctuates fairly significantly because of the prior history on when permits were issued. So they aren't, unfortunately, coming in at 12.9 permits per year. We have about 129 permitted facilities. That number varies as a new facility comes in or an existing facility closes, but it's about that number. So we need to make decisions on roughly 13 existing permits every year in order just to keep the permit backlog from growing. However, it isn't 13 each year. It's in the next 4 years, I think we're expecting about 60 permit applications to come in. So, sorry, the next 3 years. And so it's, we have a big wave of permit applications come in, and then it settles out. We are hoping over time that we're able to even that workload, but on average, we need to make decisions on 13 renewals a year, roughly, and we also need to be able to process applications for new permits and modifications to those existing permits as they come in.
When the renewals come in and you're expecting a certain number and you're expecting that you won't get to all of them, it will take an average of 2 years, you said, to do that, even though that's faster than the feds. How do you prioritize among those?
We prioritize the permits that have been in-house longest for action first. However, some of the speed of the review depends on when the information comes in from the facility. So they submit their application for a renewal, we review it, we tell them whether it's complete or not. If it's not complete, and usually it's not, we provide them with detailed information about what's needed in order for us to be able to complete the review. And then it takes them time to perform the work they need to do to get that information to us. And that's why, for example, a fee-for-service is a useful tool both for them and for us, because it really keeps us all more accountable for how long we're taking in doing each of those individual review steps, or for the applicant to get that new information to us.
Senator Powell.
I'm just thinking that I don't know where the incentive is for these businesses to get in all their information in a timely basis if they know you can continue operating continually as long as you want. What is that, and where's their responsibility there? I mean, I was thinking of Exide or others, you know, if they never get in the information, then they move to the back of the list, but that's fine with them because they really don't care if they get an extended permit, because somehow it doesn't matter. But if you said it's going to close within 1 year, if you don't have your information in, I don't know.
That's a very perceptive question, Senator Pavley. Under the current system where they pay one flat fee, in the case of Exide, for example, there were 7 separate permit applications, and 4 additional substantive supplemental packages. So, and each application is thousands of pages. So if they pay once a flat fee and then keep submitting information, there is no incentive for them to get it right the first time. However, if the applicant is paying the department for the time it takes to review each of those submittals, it is then in the applicant's interest to ensure a complete submittal is provided to us as quickly as possible, because that limits their costs. We also, when we do fee-for-service review, because it's an option under our current fee structure, and occasionally an applicant selects that, we sit down with them and give them an estimate of the work that will be needed to review their application, and they pay 25% of that estimate up front. And there is a lot of review on their part of the proposal that we give them in terms of what we think the cost will be. So it's a very accountable process, and it tends to result in a more efficient process with fewer submittals and quicker review. So we think that that would provide very good incentive for applicants to get their information in and get their permits complete. The third item that we were asked to comment on is there is, as the committee report notes, a structural deficit in the hazardous waste control account. The proposal that we were just discussing to eliminate the flat fee option for permit applications and allow only that fee-for-service review will fully recover the cost of reviewing permits. It will help address that structural imbalance, and it will provide, as I said, incentives for applicants to provide accurate and complete permit applications. While the proposal will not fully close the structural gap, it does move the fund in the right direction.
All right, thank you. You know, we're holding open these items, and there will be far more discussion, but for the moment, I want to hear from the LAO.
Sean Martin with the Legislative Analyst's Office. As part of the January 10 budget proposal, DTSC requested to make 8 limited-term permitting positions permanent, and we reviewed the proposal and we recommended the department report at budget hearings about what efficiencies will be achieved by implementing permitting enhancement work plan and whether it will result in a faster permitting process. I believe the director has addressed that. We also recommended that the department report at budget hearings on the resources that they need in order to double the number of permitting decisions it makes per year from 8 to 16 to address the permitting backlog. In response, with the April proposal to address the backlog of permits, the administration is requesting additional positions. And with these resources, they believe that they could achieve their goal of making decisions on 90% of the permits within the average of 2 years. We've reviewed the proposals. We're not raising any issues regarding the staffing request. With regard to the trailer bill language, we just received that language yesterday. We're reviewing it, so we're going to withhold on that until we've had a chance to complete our review.
All right. So your thoughts on the flat fee versus
Fee-for-service.
fee-for-service? Do you have any?
Well, in concept,
Contribute to eliminating the deficit, the deficit issue?
we think in concept it could contribute towards eliminating the structural deficit, and intuitively it makes sense. We haven't had a chance to review and ask questions of the department yet since we just received it yesterday, but that's our initial reaction.
All right. We look forward to your analysis. Sure. All right. Comments, questions? Yes, Senator Nielsen.
Well, we have obviously not had much opportunity to review it either. And the flat fee, well, there was a pretty high threshold that could be paid, up to $381,000 for large facilities and $222,000 plus for medium facilities. That's pretty hefty. And I don't know that the department could even justify that. Maybe you could. Okay, you talk about the amount of time and such. The concern that I have is with this fee for service that you're kind of be given a blank check. Now, let's get back, though, for a moment to the backlog, okay? This is a big deal. For decades, agencies have been accruing backlog, and they keep coming back to the legislature and asking for more money, more staff to deal with backlog. And then those morph into permanent positions. For me, if you're talking about backlog, you have to have a plan, a hard plan, and a regular reporting to the legislature of your progress. And that doesn't mean just each budget year, coming back and saying, oh, well, we still have a backlog, give us more PYs. But I'd say at least twice a year, if not 4 times a year, X number of positions, these are filled. Because most often you come back, not you, but general. They say, well, we couldn't get the positions filled or whatever. How many positions have been filled? How much has the backlog been reduced? Just, quarterly or something like that. So that's what I'm looking for as we proceed in this, quote, open item. And then, of course, I think it's Prop 215, we're dealing with this fee, then there's got to be a direct benefit, the fee payer. And I'm looking for some kind of trailer bill language that requires the department to demonstrate and have a burden of demonstrating the direct benefit. Not just, say we require you to pay this because this is what it cost us. I want a finding made by the department consistent with that proposition. And we are saying this is what the benefit of us to you is. I think that's consistent with what the people voted for. And by the way, this is not just applicable to you. I'm asking this for everybody. I think that's fair. And there does have to be some expectations here. And if you will, some limitations. The language that I'm just scanning here, it says the applicant being the primary beneficiary of the permit process, in fairness, must pay the actual cost of the department. Well, I don't necessarily, if I was the applicant, and even I as a legislator, I don't make that, I don't accept that at face value, that they are the primary beneficiary of the permit process. Quite frankly, most businesses in California won't say, gee, I'm the beneficiary of this permitting process of the state of California. Most are pretty unhappy with it, in fact. They think they're victims of it. I think we need to be a little, that's what I get to my point of the departments, plural, having to make a finding of what benefit is the department yielding to that business. And so in your discussions with them about what the cost is going to be, I guess it kind of sounds like a bit of a negotiation, but there's got to be a demonstrated benefit. There just cannot be a blanket finding in the trailer bill that says business benefits. I don't accept that. There's got to be a higher test for government to offer business. So just at the most cursory scanning of this document, that's something that I'm going to be wanting to look to find in it. We, government, cannot just make a finding and say, gee whiz, this is all going to be good. So please work with us and our staff, at least, to try to come up to some kind of accommodation, because pretty much what I'm looking that we're going to do here is give the agencies, plural. I'm not being specific to you because all agencies are going to do the same thing, or try to. It can't be a blank check. And you can't just sit down and say, well, we're now required to do this and this and this and this and this, and this is what it's going to cost you. There's going to have to be a higher test of the agency justifying. You can't just pick a number out of the air and say this is going to be our cost. To kind of get my drift in that?
Absolutely, Senator, and I would like to assure you that the way we will be approaching this fee-for-service option, if the Senate and the legislature choose to allow us to proceed with this is to have it a very detailed cost accounting of all the work that is done on the specific permit. There are other fees right now that support our hazardous waste control program, in addition to the permitting fee that permit applicants pay. Permit applicants pay a very small fraction of the cost of that program, and the way the fee for service is set up is it only recovers the actual cost of reviewing the permit. And it's an hourly accounting with specific activity codes, and it is made available to the applicant, and the applicant is able to challenge it based on their records of when they've met with staff, when they've interacted with staff. It is not a blank check at all. It is a very accountable process. I'd also like to point out that in the mid-2000s, there were over 100 staff in our permitting division, about 103. And in 2009 timeframe, that was cut to fewer than 20. And when there were over 100 staff in the permitting division, about 60 of them worked on permits. These two proposals, in combination with existing staff, will bring that number up to about 54.
Well, I've always found you to be very responsive, and, again, this is broadly applicable, not just to your agency, and you've always been very responsive. And, Madam Chair, thank you for leaving the item open so we can work on it.
We shall.
I do find that the trailer bill language is in need of a lot of work, though. Thank you.
One other, before I open it to public comment, one of the areas that was mentioned and that by the senator as well as the independent review panel representative was the need in these permit applications and renewals for strong financial assurances. So I think that needs, in the light of everything that has been going on, we certainly do need to make sure that the state is protected and the communities are protected in the event that something goes terribly wrong.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Senator, and with the general thrust of the panel's thoughts on this. We received 2 limited-term positions in the 14-15 budget to specifically look at financial assurance as part of permitting. Those folks have been working very hard. Originally, prior to this work, the department was trying to review financial assurance as part of its decisions on permit renewals. So that would have been a target of once every 10 years, assuming that the permits were actually being reviewed on a 10-year cycle, which regrettably they were not. We have now moved that to once every 5 years. So we are going through and reviewing all of our financial assurances, and we have them all on a 5-year review cycle now. So we have become much more focused on that financial assurance review, and expect to be working more with the panel on that in the future.
Okay, thank you. Now, if there is any public comment on any of these issues involving the permitting budget proposals, please come forward to the mic. Welcome.
Madam Chair, members, Anthony Sampson with the California Chamber of Commerce. I understand the issue's held open, but I just want to take the opportunity to speak very briefly about the elimination of the flat fee. Let me start by sort of summarizing what we've heard today, which is this is a department and a permitting process that has its issues. And without question, I very much commend the department and the director, the independent review panel, all the members, Mr. Krakow, for all of their efforts on improving the process. And we're optimistic that it will get there over time. That being said, it's still an imperfect process. And this idea of, I don't want to use the word blank check, but let me just say that the underlying foundation of a permitting process needs to be certainty and predictability. And eliminating the flat fee eliminates that certainty and predictability. Until DTSC implements these reforms and shows an ability to expedite the permitting process and to be responsive, it's hard for us to just receive quarterly checks, many of which will be disputed, raising the question, are we going to be required to pay fees on fees with respect to those disputes? I should mention that on the Assembly side, Mr. Santiago has a bill, 2794, that had originally proposed to eliminate the flat fees as well. We sat down with Mr. Santiago and explained to him our concerns with this. He acknowledged those issues and understands that DTSC is in the process of implementing these reforms. In the meantime, he's agreed to eliminate that proposal, understanding that we have expressed a willingness to talk about increasing the statutory fees. They have not been increased statutorily since 1997. Now the BOE has the authority to increase them based on CPI, but the fees themselves have not been increased. We are open to having that discussion to ensure that DTSC can recoup more of its costs. But again, eliminating the flat fee in its entirety at this time in particular, we don't think is warranted. Thank you.
So you would prefer to work on an increase in the basic fee?
We would be very much willing to work on increasing the
Deficit
flat
issue,
fees.
yeah.
Yes.
All right. Welcome. Next. Welcome.
I'm Gene Urban. I'm here today representing Waste Management. We are also opposed to the elimination of the flat fee. We acknowledge the need for more resources, but getting a bill based on the hourly costs incurred by DTSC would be utterly unsustainable. Also, we'd end up spending as much time litigating the billing as we would the underlying permit. I've seen that happen again and again, not necessarily with DTSC or others, but the fee on fee disputes would eventually swallow the underlying permit. I don't think it's necessary to upend the billing system for all 118 licensees. The director once told me she spent 90% of her time on 3 facilities: Exide, Kettleman, and Santa Susana. I would suggest that you have to grapple with the notion of general fund expenditures here. At any given time, there may be 10 facilities that are invested with notions of public interest and require general fund money, which, yes, could be spent on translation services for the public hiring experts, et cetera, et cetera. I think Kettleman is an example of a facility, the primary beneficiary of which is not necessarily the operator or the applicant, but the public. 80 to 85% of the material disposed of at Kettleman is hazardous only in this state. As I have said before publicly, we eagerly label stuff hazardous. We're not so eager when it comes to the disposal and management of it. If we think it's hazardous, it's incumbent upon us to have a place to dispose of it. I believe that warrants some general fund money. It can't all be on the applicant, particularly on an hourly basis. It would be unsustainable. So we're opposed to the elimination. We agree there should be more resources, but I think we have to be a lot more creative about how we focus on the handful of challenged facilities as opposed to what I still think many are simply routine, well understood facilities, and there's no need to abandon the existing system. Thanks.
Next, please.
Chris Maurer, on behalf of Clean Harbors Environmental Services, we respectfully oppose the proposal as well for the reasons previously stated. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We are holding, any comments from the panel?
No.
All right.
Interesting discussion. 'Cause
Indeed.
I could see there's some merit on both sides of the equation if people feel like the department is no sense of urgency either and can delay hours, but it seems to me that would also invest the applicant from making sure all their information is in a timely manner so they can